When people think of the matrix, the first visual element that often comes to mind is green. Green is certainly the film's most recognizable visual symbol. However, it's not the fundamental reason these images feel mysterious and oppressive. Even without the green tint, the film's essential visual structure would remain. This structure is created through large areas of shadow, uneven brightness, and selective illumination that reveals only essential information. In the matrix, light is not used to make the entire space clearly visible. Instead, it filters information, directs attention, and determines what can be seen. At the same time, it determines what must remain hidden in darkness. To understand this lighting logic, we recreated 3 shots from this film. In this scene, we didn't begin by recreating the green color palette. We first reconstructed the relationship between the subject and the background. A cool LED was positioned to the front side of the subject. This light was motivated by the monitor. It illuminates only part of the face, shoulder, and arm. It doesn't illuminate the entire face evenly from the front. Part of the subject is revealed. The remaining information gradually falls into shadow. A second LED near the camera projects a cool green light onto the background. It doesn't function as the main light on the subject. Its purpose is to provide low-level environmental color to the wall and the surrounding space. This cool green tone gives the room a digital quality that feels detached from ordinary reality. The large dark area on the left side of the frame is equally important. It's not simply empty space caused by insufficient lighting. It's deliberately preserved negative space. The audience is shown only what the story requires. The unseen area encourages the viewer to imagine what may still be concealed in the shadows. What needs to be recreated in this shot is therefore not simply the color green. What matters is the visual order created through selective illumination. Light provides only the minimum amount of information. The remaining space is allowed to stay uncertain. The second shot shows a character appearing through a narrow opening in a door. The recreated footage was horizontally mirrored. This brings the position of the subject and the direction of the doorway closer to the original composition. Here, light is used not only to shape the character. It also separates the door, the subjects, and the room into different spatial layers. A low-intensity LED was placed along the right side of the door. It creates a narrow strip of sidelight along the edge of the door. This light does not illuminate the entire surface. It only defines the edge and the texture of the door. As a result, the foreground separates from the surrounding darkness. A subtle green ambient light was retained inside the room. It continues the color relationship established in the previous scene. At the same time, it preserves a minimal amount of depth in the background. However, the original location used a glass door. The glass allowed cool light to pass through or reflect back toward the subject. This unwanted spill would weaken the shadows that needed to remain dense. We therefore placed a black flag behind the door. The black flag absorbed the excess cool light and the reflections. This technique is known as negative fill. A cool green K light near the camera illuminates only part of the face. It creates a clear division between light and shadow. A separate facial light slightly raises the brightness of the eyes and cheek. This light is also restricted by a black flag. As a result, it doesn't flatten the entire face. A handheld hair light defines the edges of the hair and shoulder. This edge light separates the subject from the dark background. This scene demonstrates that construct is not created only by adding light. In many situations, removing light is even more important. The black flags absorb unnecessary reflections. They protect the shadow side of the face and allow the darkness to remain its density. Light shapes what is visible. Negative fill shapes what remain unseen. The third shot is an ensemble composition in which several characters appear together in the doorway. The central question is no longer simply how to light a single face. It examines how lighting can get the viewer through a composition containing several people. The original film does not illuminate every character equally. The foreground figures, background figures, doorway, and environment occupy different brightness levels. The viewer first notices the primary figures in the foreground. Only afterward does the eye begin to read the figures and space behind them. In our recreation, a large softbox was positioned to one side of the corridor. The softbox was raised above the subjects. It provides a soft but directional source of light. It establishes the primary facial exposure of the foreground figures. However, this light was not allowed to spread across the entire location. Black flags were placed near the glass wall. These flags restricted the spell created by the softbox. They also reduced reflections on the glass surface. This prevents the foreground and background from being flattened into the same level of brightness. Shaded light sources deeper in the corridor provide low-level environmental information. They don't function as the main modeling lights on the characters. Instead, differences in distance, size, and intensity help create spatial depth. The function of each source becomes clearer in the light-by-light test. When the main soft source is removed, the foreground figures immediately lose visual emphasis. They are still present in the frame, however, they are no longer the clear primary visual focus. When the broader environmental illumination is switched off, the background wall begins to disappear. The figures in the background also begin to lose facial information. The spatial relationship between foreground and background is consequently weakened. When only the low-intensity practical lights remain, the space is still faintly visible. However, they are no longer sufficient to support the complete ensemble composition. This demonstrates that depth in an ensemble shoot doesn't come from overall brightness. It comes from the precious distribution of brightness between different figures and areas of the space. Lighting determines who is seen first. It also determines how much information the background is allowed to retain. Across these three recreations, we found that the visual identity of the matrix doesn't primarily depend on a large number of lighting fixtures, nor does it come only from green color grading added in post-production. The first scene restricts visible information through selective illumination. The second scene protects the shadows through black flags and negative fill. The third scene organizes characters and space through a hierarchy of brightness. Green provides a visual symbol for the world of the film, but the image is fundamentally supported by the carefully controlled relationship between light and shadow. In the Matrix, lighting does more than illuminate the characters. It's not designed to reveal everything to the audience. It operates more like a system of visual control. It directs attention, conceals information, and separates space. At the same time, it shapes the uncertain world inhabited by the characters. Ultimately, the tension of the image exists not only in the illuminated areas, it also exists in the darkness that has been deliberately preserved.